Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much, guys. It's a bit different when you're promoting your own movie to when you come to Comic-Con with X-Men. This hall was full. And now it's just you good, loyal people. And I love you all for coming. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us about Eat Locals. And now how did this project get started? How did you kind of kick this whole thing into gear?
Well, I think I'm cheap and easy to be around, so I've made 150 movies, and I think after 150 films, you get to the point where you go, hold on a second, I think I could do this better. So I made Eat Locals, and now I'm not quite so judgmental.
And how long did it kind of take you to make the movie as a whole, then?
I've owned the project and had it in development for about 10 years. Me and Dexter Fletcher started trying to work on stuff. After Lock, Stock, we started working together. Obviously, he's flown with his stuff, which is amazing. But we developed this idea. This was written by Danny King, who also wrote Wild Bill, which was Dexter Fletcher's first film. And we were developing stuff with Danny, and then Dexter kind of took off, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to find a new director for this, because I was producing it. And then I thought, you know what? It's only fear which stops all of us from directing. So I thought I'm going to have to bite the bullet and get on with it. So that's what I did.
And now here we are. It's out. Yes. It's out on VOD and Blu-ray as of Monday.
It is,
and it's got an incredible cast with it. I mean, some British legends as well as some American talented actors as well. Yeah. How did you assemble all of that cast into this one movie?
I think the reason they let me make the film was because I promised them an amazing cast, and I said I'll cast it out on my phone. I think I promised them Danny Craig and Michael Fassbender. I didn't quite achieve that, but I ended up with an amazing cast. I think if you spend 150 movies sitting in people's trailers listening to how their girlfriends split up with them and stroking their backs and going, don't worry, mate, it's going to be fine. Eventually you acquire enough friends to make a film. I also don't mind making coffee, and I think it was just, you know, I think my fiscal value to the producers was who was in my phone, and I cast it out on my phone, so I was very lucky to have those people respond. Like Charlie Cox, who was in New York doing Daredevil, said, I said, I want you to do a film with me, Charlie, it's my film, and he goes, well, just tell me where to be and when, and how many days it's going to take. And Charlie said, you've got to speak to Marvel. You're going to have to speak to Marvel because they don't want me to do the film. And I said, okay. So I phoned Marvel, and they said, or his producers said, he's not allowed to, if he's going to do the film, he's not allowed to run faster than is humanly possible, and he's not allowed to fly. And I said, okay, well, I promise you Charlie Cox won't fly or run fast. And they went, okay, you can do it then. So wow. Charlie was great. It was great to get people like that.
And I understand as well, Jason Statham worked on the film?
Statham. So we had this thing where I wanted to try and get the Lock, Stock boys back together again. So Dexter is obviously, he's Mr. Thatcher, so he's got a great part. Nick Moran is one of the soldiers who's silly. I'm in it, my head is in the fridge. And Jason Statham directed this fight sequence. There's a sequence in the middle of the film which is like 2 minutes of a fight in one take, and Jason helped me choreograph that. So yeah, we're all back together, probably for the last time, I would think.
And that is an incredible feat, though, to, as you say, just to cast your phone out of a film and then to produce this whole movie and get it done like that. I mean, and what's even more impressive is it's your first time directing.
Yeah.
So how do you feel now looking back on the project as a whole now you've done it?
I'm really proud of it. I mean, it is a feat. Thank you for saying that. It is a feat to get a film made, and a lot of people talk about it. Now, luckily, I've done it, and I'm desperate to start again, and hopefully you'll enjoy this one. And if you enjoyed this one, then you'll tell your mates, and hopefully next time I come back with my next film, there might be up to 25, 30 people in the hall.
Well, or a few thousand, you never know.
Yeah, a couple of thousand. It is different, though, when you come with Universal for, you know, LXG or, you know, X-Men. It's an amazing experience to come to Comic-Con. And you just sort of get driven in, and the hall's packed, and there's thousands of people, and then you get driven out again, and you're like, mate, Comic-Con's amazing. But when you're actually out here, you know, pitching against the big boys with your independent film, it can be tough. So I really appreciate your support, and I really hope you enjoy the film.
Do you think that is the challenge of being in an in the independent movie scene now is because a lot of bigger movies have that bigger budget and that bigger amount of marketing spend.
You know, it's hard to compete. I mean, you guys love film as much as I do, and you know, you get brainwashed into watching certain films. You know, those films you go and see and you go, why did I go and see that? And then you go, oh, because it was on every bus and every poster for 4 weeks, and by the time I actually got into the cinema, it felt like I had no choice. You know, but when you're competing against those guys, it's really hard to get people to go to the cinema to see a film. So, controversially, you know, platforms like Netflix and iTunes and stuff, even though you're looking at them on iPads and not, as we love to watch films on big screens, you know, you've got a better chance of your film being seen that way. So I don't know what the answer is, how to combat the big studios with independent films. But great independent films still get made and great independent films still get watched, so that's a good sign. It's actually quite good because the lights are really bright, so there could be thousands of you. There are. Hi, Mum. Hi, Mum.
And do you think that actually kind of helps get a loyal fan base when you're an independent film, though? Because people then go to see the film because they want to, not because they've actually been told that they want to.
Well, luckily there's a crossover. Like I saw just outside there's a massive stand for Wonder Woman. And, you know, when you look at the actors in Wonder Woman, there's Saeed and there's Ewan Bremner and all these great independent actors that the studios still take from, you know what I mean? It's like me, I've made probably 80 independent films, but 20 studio movies, but they come to those movies, you know, they come to them, they go, we'll have him, we'll have her, and we'll have those two. And so it's still a breeding ground for talent, and a lot of people exist only in that world and do very well. So I think it definitely has a relevance, and when you see a film like Wonder Woman, which I think myself was a studio movie, but was, you know, politically interesting, used great British talent, used great American talent, great American director. I just think, you know, you can still make great movies within the studio system. It's tougher.
Especially to compete now with such a full marketplace.
Sure.
It must be. I mean, how have you found kind of now you've got this finished product, you've got Eat Locals out there. How have you found being on the other side of that and having to physically go out and sell it more rather than having to rely on a publicity team to go
It's tough for you? It's tough, but you know, to me, when people talk about cult classics, usually I mean, you know this better than I do, you guys are all film buffs. A cult classic is a movie that failed financially, that later on people went, actually it's pretty good. You know, but the failed financially part of that is really important to becoming a cult classic, you know, because it means not many people have seen it, or not many people saw it at the time it was released. And I think that's why things like Netflix are sort of interesting, because, you know, we go on to, I'm not going to tell you when, because I hope you're going to buy the DVD, but eventually we'll end up on Netflix, and that's a really great place to go and find those movies that, you know, that you didn't catch the first time around, or that is 3 or 4 years old and you never heard of, and then people start talking about. So, what am I saying? Yeah, getting it into the cinemas and getting people to go to the cinemas and getting people to buy it on DVD the first time round is tough. It is tough. But the great thing about film, unlike plays, is it's forever.
Yeah.
You know, Eat Locals, whatever anyone thinks of it, will be in existence forever on DVD, and Blu-ray comes out Monday.
And your first time directing challenge, how did you, looking back on it, how did you enjoy it? What would you do
loved every second. I mean, I think the thing which stops us directing in the film business, actors, are two things. One is fear and one is opportunity. But once you've combated the fact that you're terrified, because you're the last call, you know, if you're making a movie and there's a decision to be made. Dexter Fletcher says it's like being pecked to death by 1,000 pigeons every day. And it is, because you've got to make decisions, but they're really simple decisions. They're generally just yes, no. And if you can do that 1,000 times a day using your instinct, then that's how you make movies. That's how you make films. At whatever level of greatness or low budget, you're just making that decision. And if you can be confident to make it, and it's the best feeling, because whatever the film turns out like, that's your baby, that's your decision. And when I made my little movie, I decided I wanted to pollute it with as much Jason Flemyng as I could possibly get into it. So all the music, all the actors, most of the lines, all the design, everything is all your creation, and that is an amazing feeling, just a magical thing to be able to do that. Put your wife in it, no one can stop you. Put my missus is in it, all my best friends are in it, my father-in-law's in it, the twins, my 6-year-old boys are in it. It's just this great feeling that you go, I can do what I like. This is amazing. So, that's where I'm happiest, is making movies, and I said earlier on, there was a stage we were doing a chat on earlier on, and they said, when was the happiest day of your life? And obviously you're meant to say, marrying my wife. But I didn't. I said, on Lake Pontchartrain, being directed by David Fincher with Brad Pitt. And even though I got slaughtered for saying it, that's the truth. And that is when I'm happiest, is making films with the best people I can possibly make films with, and surrounded by people that I respect. And that's the great thing about what we do.
And of course, you forgot the birth of your children.
And the birth of my twin boys, even though they drive me mad. But I just picked up 2 little R2-D2s for them, Lego R2-D2s. So I should be in the clear by about 7:30.
But doesn't that also, going back to the birth of children, and going back to children in particular, doesn't that also give you something to give them when they get older? This is Daddy's legacy. This is what Daddy's done for a career. This is where, when I was away on a trip for a couple of days or weeks, this is what Daddy was doing. And doesn't that kind of give you a bonding moment with them?
Yeah, I think as they hit 6, they're beginning to realise there's a cachet in the fact that Dad was in X-Men First Class. They're just beginning to go, so Papa, you're like the red guy. And I'm like, yes, my son, I am the red guy. And there is, that they're beginning to get it. I mean, they're kind of nonplussed and not interested, which is probably a good thing. But that's what I do, and I've always done, and will always do, as be an actor. And the only difference now is that I try and do it in between, within the M25, rather than out of Mongolia. And the thing about making films, which was amazing was that if you make small films, we edited it in my bedroom. So the kids come in and I'm sitting there with the editor and I go, bruv, can you just make sure, if you take 3 seconds off that scene, I'm just going to take kids to school and I'll be back in a minute. And so he has a fiddle around and I go and take the kids to school, and then I come back and he goes, I took out that pause. And I'm like, yeah, that's brilliant. So it was great, it was really, really great to be able to do that and be at home. I don't know what I'd do if I had a proper budget and they put me in a studio. Hopefully they won't.
And you filmed it all in Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
What was that like? 'Cause it was a very idyllic setting, and the movie's kind of seems very frenetic, really well paced.
Well, the thing about making films on a budget is that you have to have one you know this, guys. I'm talking to the converted here, but you have one location. Every single scene has to be shot within 100 meters of that location, and that location has to have changing rooms, storerooms for all the camera gear, and enough place to park your cars. And that's really the restrictions. So one location films generally are dilapidated buildings in the middle of the woods. And when you say dilapidated buildings in the middle of the woods, you kind of know that it's going to kind of be a horror film, probably involving vampires and probably involving quite a lot of blood. It's just, that's the way filmmaking is when you only have 17 days to make a film. You have to have it all in one place. So that's probably why we're so good at sort of comedy horror, I think, because it's all driven by the fact you need one location.
And one of the parts that stood out for me is Annette Crosby with a machine gun, rapid firing. Now that is, if you've watched One Foot in the Grave, seeing this British icon then with a machine gun going nuts.
Yeah.
What was that like? That was.
I mean, every person in the film is in my phone book, and from when I first started, which was Dr. Finley's Case Books, a very strange series set in Scotland, where Annette Crosby was this was 30 years ago, and she was like the old woman in that. And now she's, got a massive machine gun going, take this, you sons of bitches. And she's amazing. But I always remembered when I worked with Annette 30 years ago, I thought, I must work with Annette. I've got to put her in something. And when this came up 10 years ago, I always thought that the old crazy vampire who kills everyone should be Annette Crosby. And luckily she said yes. So that was great.
It is an incredible scene, and we were screening the
We might have a clip or two, mightn't we? Oh, do we not have clips in this room?
We might do.
Do we have clips?
Saying no.
No clips?
No clips.
Rotten sods.
But then the thing is, only going to be a spoiler then.
I'll show you on my phone.
Then it's only a spoiler because we're going to be seeing the film later
Yes,
on in
that's
the Gold
true. You can see it
Theatre,
later.
so you will see the whole film in its entirety
Okay. I'd love
this
that.
evening. So we had to see the full thing. But for you, then, looking back on the film as a whole, if you could kind of change or do one thing different, would there be anything you could do, and why?
No, not really. I mean, that's not true. When you make your first film, when you're not being monitored by a studio, you go, I'm going to do exactly what I want. And I did, and I'm really proud of it. But what you don't think of is the after sales. The thing about a film is you have to market it, you have to get it out there. And they kind of pressure you to put things in a box. They go, we want it to be a horror film, or we want it to be a comedy, or we want it to be a horror comedy, or we want it to be... And they want you to make it easy for them to market. Easy to be put on the shelves in Sainsbury's, and people go, I know exactly what that is. And I refuse to do that. And in hindsight, maybe I should have listened. It's something that they need, something tangible to market something. And if you go, it's a horror comedy, but it's also political, and it's also I think relevant to people growing up in England now. It involves Brexit and my feelings about the struggle of refugees in this country, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, whoa, 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 this is all way too much. I mean, So, in answer to your question, no, I wouldn't do anything different. But I understand that to make a film successful, it has to be a simple thing in order for people to get it. Mine isn't, and I'm very proud of that. But we'll see what you guys think.
Well, that is all the time we've got, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to come and hear me.
And I say the film will be in here at 5-ish to be on the giant screen behind us.
Brilliant. I'd love to see it.
But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, massive round of applause to the multi-talented Jason Flemyng.
Thank you, guys.